So nothing that I'm about to say is any negative reflection on anything. We were actually able to work together very professionally on this. But it was interesting that we had a system with the aviation training department where schedulers and the lead managers would work together with the folks to really create a synergistic effort in meeting the needs of the schedule. And the three senior managers at the time came up with a new program that they were going to introduce, and they called it a 5S2 program. Basically, people would work 5 days, then have a standby day, and then have 2 days off. And it was sort of interesting because after the meeting where all that was announced, I was just sitting at the computer running over a couple of things, and he walked up to me. He had a lot of respect for me. He knew I had no axes to grind, and we worked together for the entire time there very professionally. And he walked up, he said, "Randy, may I ask you something?" And I said, "You bet." And he said, "I understand you don't like this new system." I said, "To be honest with you, I think it stinks." And he said, would you be willing to talk to me about it?" I said, "Absolutely, I'll be able to professionally talk to you. Notice you don't have to take anything personally or anything." And in the process of talking about it, here's what I mentioned to him. I said, "We had a real teamwork in the program prior to this." And I said, "We would work together with the managers, with the schedulers, and they always got the needs met. And in my case, I only live 15 minutes from here. So the schedulers and the managers knew they could call on me, and in 99% of the time, I'd be here for them." And it happened just that way. And I said, "But what you did is you took that teamwork and threw it right in the dumpster." And I said, "The other part of this is that you and I both know that's going to turn into a 6-2, and which it did. And in fact, just a very couple of years later, the company just completely canned that whole program because it didn't work. And it was interesting that he looked at me, because what he said was very, very key. He looked at me and said, "Well, one thing that I have to admit did not enter our mind, that there were some people that were willing to work more." I said, "You know what? There are, and I'm one of them. But the schedulers and I knew we could work together and make it work for both of us." And I said, "That's synergy, that's teamwork." And he was actually surprised by that. And one of the things that I told him is, I said, "You know what? The best ideas do not always come from the very top." I said, "The people that are working it day to day often have a better handle on what's needed. And if you can develop your people, and if you can develop that synergy, very often they'll take care of it." And what's interesting is, again, nothing bad on this guy. He took everything that I said very professionally. To this day, we still have a very high degree of professional trust in each other and respect, and I'd work for him any day of the week. But it is sort of interesting that when you're talking about leading teams in a rapidly changing environment, this one-size-fits-all mindset rarely works. It makes somebody feel good because they were able to come up with a program, but very often it doesn't get you where you want. And very often you leave, and I use the term sort of figuratively, but you sort of leave dead bodies in your wake when you do that. And so if you think about it, that's a key aspect of it. It was interesting that a few months later, actually, I ended up going part-time as I started my company. And what was interesting is we were just having a short discussion, and he said, "Well, I know you went part-time to finish your master's degree." I said, "No," I said, "I could have finished my master's degree online." And he said, "Oh, do you mind if I ask you why you went part-time?" I said, "Sure." I said, "I'll tell you." And I gave him one name, who happened to be the manager at the time. And this manager was actually walked out of the building under escort because he had been doing unethical things and things that could have gotten people into trouble. And I mentioned his name, and this manager just sort of rolled his eyes. He said, "Boy, that was a mistake." I said, "You know what? It was." And I said, "Had you gotten any input from anybody that worked with him, you would have known that." So it's interesting. It's not to say that that gentleman was deficient in his role, but we have to understand sometimes, particularly when you're working in a team that's in a rapidly changing environment, that very often the best ideas don't come from the top. And a lot of times, if you try to make it just from the top, you're going to be missing some key aspects of the issue. You're going to be missing some key factors that can lead to success. And so I leave that with you. Look in your organization, and how are those decisions? How are those processes set up? And what might be missing? Is your organization incorporating synergy in an effective way, or is it not? Because we can all do better. So I leave that with you for your consideration this time.